Jupiter is stepping into one of the most complex and emotionally charged zones of the entire zodiac when it enters Ashlesha Nakshatra on August 19, 2026, and it remains there until October 31, 2026. Ashlesha is the final nakshatra of Cancer, and it carries the whole chart toward a gandanta zone, a deep karmic knot where the watery energy of Cancer starts dissolving into the fiery energy of Leo. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so on one level it operates at full strength, expressing its expansive, generous, and wise qualities. But Ashlesha itself is ruled by Mercury, an enemy planet to Jupiter in Vedic astrology. So we have an unusual combination here, a planet known for abundance, faith and higher wisdom sitting inside a nakshatra famous for insecurity, clinging, hidden fears and psychological undercurrents. Ashlesha is symbolized by the coiled serpent. Its ruling deities are the Nagas, divine serpent beings known in Indian tradition as healers, mystics and keepers of hidden or occult knowledge. This nakshatra is deeply intuitive and psychic in nature because it sits completely inside Cancer, the most emotional sign of the zodiac. People and events connected with Ashlesha carry a certain hypnotic quality, an ability to sense what is left unsaid, and a tendency to hold on tightly to whatever feels safe and familiar. When a planet as large and philosophical as Jupiter moves through this space, it does not lose its core nature of growth and higher meaning, but it starts expressing that nature in a far more inward, guarded, and emotionally layered way than usual. Around October 8th, Jupiter enters the deepest and most sensitive part of this transit, the actual gandanta point, which begins at 26 degrees 40 minutes of Cancer and continues right up to the moment Jupiter leaves the sign. On October 31st, Jupiter crosses into Magha Nakshatra and Leo sign, but even then it stays inside the gandanta belt until it passes 3 degrees 20 minutes of Leo. Gandanta points are among the most sensitive junctions in the whole zodiac. They exist exactly where water signs meet fire signs, and they are known for sudden endings, unexpected turns and a strong pull between old habits and new beginnings. What makes this transit even more significant is that Jupiter will not cross this junction only once. Later in this same cycle Jupiter turns retrograde and slips back into Cancer, crossing the same gandanta point a second and third time before finally settling into Leo for good in June 2027. So this Cancer to Leo junction becomes a recurring theme across the coming months, and its lessons will keep returning until they are fully absorbed. There is another layer building up during this period. From September 18th, Mars also enters sidereal Cancer, where it is debilitated. As Mars follows closely behind Jupiter, while Jupiter continues moving toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, Jupiter ends up hemmed in between two challenging influences, a situation known in Vedic astrology as Papa Kartari Yoga. This does not cancel Jupiter's good nature, but it adds pressure, emotional intensity, and a feeling of being boxed in from both directions for a stretch of time. Many people may notice more insecurity, more reactivity, or a stronger urge to withdraw and protect themselves during these weeks. The encouraging part is that this same pressure, when worked with consciously instead of resisted, becomes one of the fastest routes to genuine inner transformation that a Jupiter transit can offer. Since Saturn is currently retrograde in Pisces, Jupiter from Cancer also casts its 9th aspect onto that sign, bringing its natural benefic influence to bear on Saturn there. Saturn itself remains a natural malefic and its retrograde motion tends to slow things down further, so this aspect is more like a steadying, disciplining hand from Jupiter rather than an easy boost. And how helpful it actually feels will depend a great deal on how Saturn sits in each person's own individual chart. At its heart, this transit asks each of us to look inward rather than outward for answers. Ashlesha wants us to sit honestly with our own fears, attachments and unconscious patterns, and to slowly release whatever no longer serves us. Handled with awareness, Jupiter in Ashlesha can awaken real intuition, healing ability, and even the early stirrings of Kundalini energy. Handled without awareness, the same placement can simply inflame insecurity, possessiveness, and the fear of letting go. To assess the impact of this transit, it is crucial to consider your Ascendant and Moon signs. The Ascendant sign provides insights into the timing of life events, while the Moon sign reveals how you will emotionally respond to these changes. Additionally, consider the position of your current Mahadasha Lord in your birth chart, as it can shed light on how these transits will influence the recurring themes of your current Dasha period. It is important to remember that the effects of this transit will vary for each person. The specific area of life where changes are likely to occur depends on which house Ashlesha falls in for your individual chart. For instance, if Ashlesha falls in a career-oriented house, results may manifest in career matters, and if it falls in a relationship-oriented house, results may manifest in relationship matters. This insight helps individuals navigate the potential areas of significant changes during this transit. Keep in mind that the effects of this transit will differ from person to person, depending on Jupiter's interaction with the planets in their individual birth charts and its transit through the zodiac. It is also worth noting that individuals currently experiencing Jupiter Mahadasha or Antarctica may feel the effects of this transit more intensely. With that context set, let us now look at what this transit means for each of the 12 signs. For Aries, Jupiter owns the 9th house of Sagittarius, the house of religion, learning and long journeys, and the 12th house of Pisces, the house of spirituality, charity and hidden matters. Right now this Jupiter is moving through your 4th house of home, mother and peace of mind, and it is doing so while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the most emotionally layered and psychologically loaded nakshatra of the entire zodiac. This combination brings the deepest themes of home and inner security right to the surface for you over these weeks. Ashlesha is ruled by Mercury and carries the symbolism of the coiled serpent. When this energy touches your 4th house, it does not simply bring a quiet, comfortable domestic phase. It brings home and mother-related matters that are wrapped in emotional complexity. You may find yourself becoming far more attached to your living space, your family routines or your mother than usual, almost to the point of clinging. There can be a strong urge to hold everyone and everything close, to protect the home environment, and to resist any change happening there, even changes that would actually be good for you. At the same time, this is a wonderful window for tapping into the psychic and intuitive gifts that Ashlesha carries. Many Aries individuals will find their instincts about home, property and family becoming sharper and more accurate during this period, almost like an inner radar switching on. On the practical side, this transit is still supportive for property matters because Jupiter remains exalted even while moving through Ashlesha. Buying a house, renovating an existing one, or finally settling into a long-term residence are all real possibilities. Some of you may inherit property, or receive support connected to ancestral land or a family home. But because Ashlesha adds an undertone of insecurity, decisions may not come easily. You could go back and forth over a property choice, worry unnecessarily about finances tied to it, or feel unusually anxious about whether your home life is stable enough. The lesson Ashlesha is offering here is to separate genuine caution from fear-based clinging. Your relationship with your mother, or mother figures in general, becomes an emotional focal point. There may be a phase of extra closeness, deep conversations, or a chance to finally understand something about her that you never fully grasped before. On the other hand, old patterns of dependency, guilt or unspoken tension in that relationship can also surface now, simply because Ashlesha does not let anything stay hidden in the 4th house for long. Approaching this with patience rather than reacting defensively will help you release old emotional weight instead of adding to it. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, and it lands directly in this same 4th house, right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga around your home and peace of mind, meaning this area of life feels squeezed between two demanding influences for a while. Domestic irritation, sudden expenses at home, or friction with family members can increase during this window. It is a temporary pressure rather than a permanent shift, but it is worth being extra patient at home through late September and into October. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, the pull to cling to old routines, an old house, or an old emotional pattern connected to family becomes even stronger. This is exactly the period where consciously choosing to let go of what is no longer serving your peace of mind will pay off the most. Anything you release around this gandanta window tends to make space for a genuinely fresh start once Jupiter finally moves into Leo. Jupiter from your 4th house also casts its special aspects on your 8th, 10th, and 12th houses. The 8th house aspect can quietly support you through research, insurance, inheritance, or joint finance matters connected to your home. The 10th house aspect brings a subtle boost to career and public standing, so decisions you make about your home base in this period can end up shaping your professional direction too. The 12th house aspect strengthens any spiritual practice, meditation or quiet retreat you take up, and many Aries individuals will feel genuinely drawn to solitude, prayer or healing work at home during this transit. Since your first house Lord Mars is also involved this season through its own debilitated placement in Cancer, self-confidence and personal energy levels may dip a little at home even while other areas of life feel fine. Rest, proper sleep and not overextending yourself domestically will matter more than usual. Overall, this is a transit about coming home to yourself, quite literally. Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 4th house is asking you to look honestly at what makes you feel secure, to notice where that security has quietly turned into fear or control, and to choose real emotional stability over simply clinging to the familiar. If you can do that, the second half of this transit and the eventual move of Jupiter into Leo will feel like a genuine release, a lighter and more grounded relationship with home, mother, and your own inner peace than you have had in a long time. Practical steps like organizing your living space, having honest conversations with family, and giving yourself permission to rest at home will carry real weight through these weeks. Property decisions made now, especially ones that come from calm reflection rather than anxious urgency, tend to age well once this gandanta phase has fully passed. For Taurus, Jupiter owns your 8th house of Sagittarius, and your 11th house of Pisces. So Jupiter carries a service and behind-the-scenes flavor in your chart. Right now Jupiter is moving through your 3rd house of communication, effort, courage and short journeys, and it is doing this while sitting in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the most psychologically intense nakshatra in the zodiac. That combination turns this transit into a period where your words, your daily efforts and your hidden inner drive all get pulled into sharp focus. Ashlesha rules the coiled serpent and hidden knowledge, and in your 3rd house it does not give you a light, breezy communication phase. Instead it gives your speech, writing and business dealings a deeper, more strategic and sometimes more guarded quality. You may notice yourself thinking several steps ahead before you speak, reading between the lines of what others say, or picking up on undercurrents in conversations that most people miss. This is actually a real gift during this transit. Your instincts about people, deals and information become sharper. Some of you may find real success in fields like counseling, research, teaching, investigation or any work that blends emotional insight with solid factual information. On the practical side, this is a strong window for working hard on business ventures, sales, marketing or any income stream tied to knowledge, teaching or communication. Because Jupiter is still exalted even while passing through Ashlesha, effort put in now has real potential to expand later. Long distance or work-related travel can pick up, sometimes connected to religious, spiritual or educational purposes rather than pure leisure. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up as second-guessing your own ideas, overthinking a pitch or negotiation, or becoming unusually possessive about a project, a plan or a piece of information you do not want others to have access to. Learning to trust your sharpened intuition rather than spiral into anxious overthinking is the real task here. This is also a meaningful period for picking up a new skill or hobby, especially anything that involves research, healing, counseling or working with hidden or specialized knowledge. Ashlesha's connection to the Nagas, the mythic serpent healers, means subjects like alternative medicine, psychology, astrology itself, or any practice built around reading subtle signals can appeal strongly to you right now, and some of you may take the first real steps toward learning one of these seriously. Courage is the 3rd house's other core theme, and Ashlesha can quietly test how much genuine courage you have versus how much of your boldness has been built on covering up insecurity. Situations may arise that push you to speak up, negotiate firmly, or take an action you would normally avoid, and how you handle them will tell you a lot about where you actually stand. Your bond with a younger sibling becomes another emotional focal point during this transit. There is a good chance of a mutually supportive phase with them, possibly involving shared work, shared learning or simply becoming each other's confidant. Older unresolved tension with a sibling can also resurface now, since Ashlesha rarely leaves anything buried for long, and this is a good period to finally address it honestly rather than avoid it. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in this same 3rd house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga around your efforts, communication and courage, meaning this part of life can feel unusually pressured for a stretch. Watch for a short temper in conversations, rush decisions in business dealings, or accidents during travel through late September and into October. Slowing down before reacting will save you real trouble here. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old patterns around how you communicate, how much effort you invest, or how tightly you hold on to a business idea can intensify before finally loosening. This is a good window to release outdated ways of working or speaking that no longer serve your growth, since anything let go of now tends to clear space for a stronger start once Jupiter reaches Leo. Jupiter from your 3rd house also casts its special aspects on your 7th, 9th, and 11th houses. The 7th house aspect can bring supportive business partnerships or meaningful new connections into your circle. The 9th house aspect strengthens your interest in higher learning, philosophy, or a guru figure who may guide your efforts during this time. The 11th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, gives a real boost to gains, income, and your wider network of friends and well-wishers, so effort invested now can genuinely pay off in tangible terms. This transit also invites you to be careful with wealth even as your income sources expand, since Ashlesha's insecure streak can push you toward impulsive spending as a way of soothing anxiety, or conversely toward overly tight, fear-driven saving. A balanced, well-informed approach to money and investment will serve you far better than either extreme. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 3rd house is asking you to use your naturally growing intuition as a genuine asset in your work and communication, rather than letting the same sensitivity turn into insecurity or manipulation. If you channel this energy consciously, you can come out of this transit as a sharper communicator, a more strategic worker, and someone others instinctively trust with sensitive information. Business built now, especially anything involving teaching, counseling, writing, or knowledge sharing, has real long-term potential once the gandanta phase passes and Jupiter moves fully into Leo. For Gemini, Jupiter owns your 7th house of Sagittarius and your 10th house of Pisces. Right now Jupiter is passing through your 2nd house of wealth, speech and family, and it is doing so while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra most associated with insecurity, clinging and hidden emotional undercurrents. This gives the coming weeks a very particular flavor where money, words and family bonds all become emotionally charged. Ashlesha is ruled by Mercury and symbolized by the coiled serpent, and when it colors your 2nd house, it does not give you a simple, comfortable rise in income. Instead, wealth and family matters start carrying deeper psychological weight. You may find yourself becoming unusually attached to your savings, overly cautious about spending, or quietly anxious about financial security even when your actual numbers look fine. On the more positive side, your intuition about money, investments and family dynamics sharpens considerably. Many Gemini individuals will find themselves sensing financial opportunities or family tension before it becomes obvious to anyone else, almost like picking up on signals under the surface. On the practical side, this remains a genuinely good transit for growing your wealth, since Jupiter stays exalted even while moving through Ashlesha. Expansion in family, whether through marriage, childbirth, or simply a season of closer bonding, is a real possibility for many of you. Financial gains connected to your family lineage, inherited assets, or a family business can also come through. Income linked to teaching, counseling, spiritual work, or sharing knowledge is especially favored now, and your speech itself carries added weight and persuasive power during this period, so choose your words with care since they can shape outcomes more than usual. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up as hoarding behavior, unnecessary worry about money you do not actually need to worry about, or a tendency to say things sharply and then regret them. Family conversations can turn emotionally loaded quickly, especially around old resentments about money, inheritance, or favoritism. The healthier path through this transit is to voice your needs honestly and calmly rather than letting unspoken resentment build up quietly, since Ashlesha has a way of eventually forcing buried feelings out into the open regardless. The 2nd house also governs your personal values and sense of self-worth, and Ashlesha's presence here can quietly test whether your confidence is built on something solid or on the approval and validation of others. There may be moments during this transit where you catch yourself measuring your own worth through your bank balance, your possessions, or what your family thinks of your choices. Recognizing this pattern when it shows up, rather than acting from it automatically, is one of the quieter but more valuable lessons this placement is offering you. Food and eating habits, which also fall under the 2nd house in Vedic astrology, may need some attention too, since emotional eating or comfort eating can increase when Ashlesha stirs up insecurity, and a little extra mindfulness around meals will serve you well through these weeks. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in the same 2nd house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga around your wealth, speech and family life, meaning this area can feel squeezed between two demanding influences for a while. Watch for harsh words spoken in the heat of the moment, sudden or unplanned expenses, or friction with family members through late September into October. A pause before responding in family arguments will genuinely help here. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old fears around money or old unresolved family patterns can intensify briefly before finally starting to loosen their grip. This is a valuable window to consciously release financial anxiety, or an old family grudge that has outlived its usefulness, since anything you let go of here tends to clear the way for a lighter, more secure phase once Jupiter finally moves into Leo. Jupiter from your second house also casts its special aspects on your 6th, 8th, and 10th houses. The 6th house aspect helps you manage debts, daily expenses, and work-related obstacles more effectively than usual. The 8th house aspect brings a subtle boost around inheritance, insurance, or joint finances, which can support the wealth theme running through this whole transit. The 10th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, strengthens your career and public reputation, so how you handle your family and finances during this period can end up quietly shaping how others see your professional standing too. Because Mercury rules both your chart's second house significations in a general sense and Ashlesha Nakshatra itself, pay attention to Mercury's own condition in your birth chart, since it will color exactly how sharp, cunning, or scattered your financial and verbal instincts feel during these weeks. A well-placed Mercury tends to turn this transit into a genuinely clever, resourceful period, while a stressed Mercury can tip the same energy toward overthinking and worry. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your second house is asking you to build real financial and emotional security from the inside out, rather than gripping tightly out of fear. If you can speak honestly, save wisely without hoarding out of anxiety, and let old family wounds finally heal instead of festering quietly, this transit has the potential to leave you meaningfully wealthier, both in bank balance and in the emotional closeness of your family, once Jupiter completes its journey through this intense but ultimately rewarding nakshatra. For Cancer, Jupiter owns your 6th house of Sagittarius, the house of daily routine, service and job-related matters, and your 9th house of Pisces, the house of religion, higher learning and long-distance travel. Right now Jupiter is transiting your very own first house, the house of self, body and life path, and it is doing this while sitting in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the most emotionally intense and psychologically layered nakshatra of the zodiac. Because this transit is happening directly over your first house, its effects reach into practically every part of your life and personality. Ashlesha is symbolized by the coiled serpent and rules over our deepest insecurities, our clinging tendencies, and our hidden psychological patterns. With Jupiter, your natural significator of growth and optimism, sitting in this nakshatra directly on your identity, you may feel unusually introspective, sometimes uncertain of yourself, and far more attuned to your own inner world than usual. Questions about who you really are, what your true purpose is, and whether you are on the right path in life can surface strongly during this period. This is not a comfortable feeling all the time, but it is an honest one, and Ashlesha rarely allows superficial answers to satisfy it. On the positive side, because Jupiter remains exalted even in Ashlesha, this transit still carries real optimism and expansion for you personally. Many Cancer individuals will feel a fresh sense of hope, a pull toward learning something new, or an urge to travel and broaden their horizons during this window. This is also an excellent period for developing the natural psychic and intuitive gifts that Ashlesha carries, since it is sitting right on your own self. Meditation or simply paying closer attention to your gut feelings can bring genuinely useful insight now. Physically, since Jupiter tends to add weight wherever it sits, some of you may notice changes around body weight, appetite, or fluid retention, so keeping an eye on diet and movement is worth doing. Because Ashlesha is ruled by Mercury, the planet governing your 3rd and 12th houses, your mind becomes especially active during this transit. You may notice yourself paying closer attention to people's words, tone, and body language, often sensing what is left unsaid before others do. This heightened perception can be a real advantage in personal and professional situations, helping you make wiser decisions. Ashlesha can also encourage overthinking or reading too much into conversations. Trust your intuition, but allow facts and open communication to confirm your instincts before reaching conclusions. Because Jupiter from your first house casts its special 7th aspect onto your 7th house of relationships and its 5th aspect onto your 5th house of romance and children, matters of love and partnership become much more active during this transit. Existing relationships may deepen considerably, though Ashlesha's emotional intensity can also bring hidden fears of abandonment or insecurity to the surface. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, joining Jupiter directly in your first house, and Mars is debilitated here. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga right on your own first house, meaning your energy, confidence, and physical vitality can feel squeezed between two demanding influences for a stretch of time. Irritability, impulsiveness, or a short temper can increase through late September into October, and minor injuries or accidents are worth guarding against during this window through basic caution rather than fear. Since Jupiter also rules your 6th house of daily work, service, and health, and this transit is unfolding right on your own first house, changes at work or in your daily routine are likely to feel personal rather than purely practical. Some of you may take up a new job, shift your daily schedule significantly, or become far more disciplined about health and self-care during this period. Ashlesha's healing symbolism through the Nagas can express itself here as a genuine pull toward wellness practices, whether that is a new fitness routine, alternative healing methods, or simply becoming more attentive to what your body has been trying to tell you for a while. On the flip side, unresolved anxiety can also show up physically now, so do not dismiss recurring aches, digestive trouble, or sleep disturbances as unimportant, since Ashlesha tends to store emotional tension directly in the body when it is not processed consciously. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, this becomes one of the most important identity-related turning points in your recent life. Old self-images, old fears about your own worth, and old patterns of clinging to a version of yourself that no longer fits can all come up for release. By the time Jupiter finally crosses fully into Leo, whether now or after its later retrograde return through this same zone, many Cancer individuals look back and recognize this period as the moment their life path genuinely shifted for the better. Jupiter from your first house also casts its special aspects on your 5th, 7th, and 9th houses, covering romance and creativity, committed partnership, and higher learning or long journeys. This triple aspect pattern is a strong indicator that love, education, and travel are all quietly connected themes running underneath this transit, even while the headline story is your own personal transformation. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your first house is asking you to stop looking outward for validation and instead build a genuine, grounded sense of who you are. If you can sit with the discomfort of self-questioning without collapsing into insecurity, and treat this period as a real opportunity for awakening rather than a crisis, you are likely to emerge from this transit with far greater clarity about your life purpose, your relationships, and your own inner strength than you have had in a long time. For Leo, Jupiter owns your 5th house of Sagittarius, and your 8th house of Pisces. Right now Jupiter is transiting your 12th house of foreign lands, spirituality, expenses, and closure, and it is doing so while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra most connected with insecurity, hidden fears, and psychic depth. Whenever a major planet moves through the 12th house, it is generally a period of closing pending matters, and with Ashlesha's intensity layered on top, this closure process becomes far more emotionally significant than usual. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism fits the 12th house extremely well, since both are connected to what lies beneath the surface, whether that is the unconscious mind, past karma, or matters kept hidden from public view. During this transit, old emotional patterns, old fears, and unresolved situations from your past are likely to resurface with unusual clarity, almost demanding to be looked at honestly before they can finally be released. This can feel uncomfortable at times, particularly because Ashlesha adds a layer of anxiety and clinging to whatever it touches, making it harder than usual to simply let go of situations or relationships that have already run their course. On the practical side, this remains a genuinely good period for spiritual growth, since Jupiter stays exalted even while passing through Ashlesha, and the 12th house is naturally connected to Jupiter's own themes of expansion and higher meaning. Meditation, pilgrimage, retreat, or any structured spiritual practice can bring real depth and even mystical experiences for some of you during this window. Travel to foreign lands is also strongly indicated, whether for education, spiritual purposes, work, or simply a long-awaited change of scenery, and such travel now often carries more meaning than a typical trip. At the same time, expenses tend to rise during 12th house transits, and Ashlesha's insecure undertone can push you toward either impulsive spending as an emotional outlet or excessive anxious tightening around money, so a balanced, aware approach to your finances matters more than usual here. Health and hospital-related matters also fall under the 12th house, so paying attention to any ongoing physical concerns rather than ignoring them is wise during this period. Since Ashlesha rules hidden or psychosomatic conditions in particular, symptoms connected to stress, anxiety, or unprocessed emotion are more likely to show up now than purely physical ones, and addressing the emotional root alongside any medical treatment will bring better results. Since Jupiter also rules your 5th house of children, romance, and creativity, this 12th house transit can quietly touch those areas too, often through distance or closure rather than direct expansion. Some of you may find a creative project you have been working on for a long time finally reaching completion, or a chapter involving children or a romantic connection coming to a natural close so something new can begin later. If your children are traveling, studying abroad, or going through their own period of introspection during this time, try not to read every silence or distance from them as something worse than it is, since Ashlesha has a way of amplifying worry beyond what the situation actually calls for. Foreign connections in general, whether through people, opportunities, or simply a pull toward another culture or country, tend to feel unusually meaningful right now, and some genuine long-term opportunities can quietly take root even while the surface experience feels uncertain or hidden from view. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, joining Jupiter in the same 12th house, and Mars is debilitated here. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, meaning right on your own 1st house, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga that touches both your hidden, closing matters and your very identity. This combination calls for real caution around accidents, sudden health issues, or impulsive decisions made while emotionally overwhelmed through late September into October. Rest and quiet, rather than overexertion, will serve you far better during this window. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, the closure theme of this transit intensifies significantly. Whatever situations, relationships, or old identities were meant to end during this cycle tend to reach their final resolution around this window. It can feel like an ending, sometimes a difficult one, but because Jupiter itself is about to cross into your own 1st house in Leo, what follows this gandanta phase is genuinely a new beginning, arriving with real optimism once the dust settles. Jupiter from your 12th house also casts its special aspects on your 4th, 6th, and 8th houses. The 4th house aspect brings a gentle, supportive touch to your home and inner peace even amid the 12th house intensity. The 6th house aspect helps you manage obstacles, debts, or health issues more effectively than you might expect given everything else going on. The 8th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, deepens your access to occult knowledge, research, and transformative insight, making this an unusually good period for anyone drawn to astrology, psychology, or the study of hidden subjects. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 12th house is asking you to consciously close what needs closing rather than clinging to it out of fear, and to trust that the discomfort of this releasing process is preparing you for a genuinely fresh chapter. If you can lean into spiritual practice, honest self-reflection, and healthy detachment rather than anxious avoidance, this transit can leave you feeling lighter, wiser, and far more at peace with your own past by the time Jupiter finally moves into your own sign. For Virgo, Jupiter owns your 4th house of Sagittarius, and your 7th house of Pisces. So Jupiter already carries a family and relationship-oriented flavor in your chart. Right now Jupiter is moving through your 11th house of gains, income, and larger networks, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra of deep emotional undercurrents, insecurity, and hidden intuition. This combination brings a very particular texture to your financial and social gains over these weeks, where progress is real but rarely feels entirely stress-free. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism, when placed in the 11th house, tends to add complexity to how gains actually arrive. You may find money, opportunities, or recognition coming through unexpected or roundabout channels rather than a straightforward, obvious path, almost as if you have to sense where the opportunity is hiding before you can act on it. Your intuition about which social connections, business relationships, or networking opportunities are genuinely worth your energy sharpens considerably now, and many Virgo individuals will find themselves naturally filtering out people or offers that do not feel right, even before having concrete proof of it. On the practical side, this remains a strong period for gains, since Jupiter stays exalted even while passing through Ashlesha, and the 11th house is one of its most favorable placements for material and professional expansion. Gains through elder siblings, large organizations, social or professional networks, and entrepreneurial ventures are all genuinely likely. Some of you may see a promotion, a bonus, or better terms in an existing job during this window, and business opportunities connected to knowledge sharing, teaching, spirituality, or counseling are especially favored. Relocation to a new home or city is also possible, since the 11th house sits 8th from your 4th house of home, indicating meaningful change in your living situation as a side effect of career or financial growth. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up here as an unhealthy comparison with others, a nagging feeling that your gains are never quite enough, or excessive worry about whether your current network of friends and colleagues is trustworthy. Desires themselves, which are also an 11th house theme, can become unusually intense and hard to satisfy during this period, sometimes leading to frustration in relationships or friendships if you expect more from others than they are able to give. Recognizing when a genuine gut feeling about someone is at play, versus when insecurity is simply projecting doubt onto a perfectly good relationship, is the real skill this transit is asking you to develop. Friendships in particular go through a noticeable transformation during this transit. The 11th house governs your wider circle of friends and well-wishers, and with Ashlesha's serpent energy running through it, some friendships may reveal a depth or loyalty you had not fully appreciated before, almost like discovering a friend who has quietly had your back all along. Others may reveal themselves as more self-serving or draining than they first appeared, and Ashlesha rarely lets you keep ignoring that once it becomes clear. It is worth paying attention to which relationships genuinely nourish you and which ones simply feed on your energy or attention, since this transit tends to sort people into those two categories with unusual clarity. Elder siblings, if you have any, can also play a supportive and encouraging role in your gains during this period, whether through direct help, useful advice, or simply opening a door you would not have found on your own. Group settings, professional associations, and online communities connected to your field can also quietly become sources of real opportunity now, so it is worth staying visible and engaged in these spaces rather than withdrawing out of shyness or self-doubt. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in your 11th house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, your 12th house, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga influencing gains, friendships and networks from one side, and hidden expenses or isolation from the other. Temporary pressure around income, friendships, team projects or professional networks may increase through late September into October, even though the long-term trend for gains remains positive. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old patterns around ambition, comparison with others, or an unhealthy attachment to a particular goal or social circle can intensify briefly before finally starting to ease. This is a valuable window to consciously release any gain or connection you have been chasing purely out of insecurity rather than genuine alignment, since letting go here tends to clear space for far better opportunities once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo. Jupiter from your 11th house also casts its special aspects on your 3rd, 5th, and 7th houses. The 3rd house aspect supports your efforts and courage in pursuing new income streams. The 5th house aspect brings a favorable touch to creativity, education, and children-related matters. The 7th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, strengthens partnerships and marriage prospects, meaning your gains during this period may well arrive through, or alongside, a significant relationship or business partner. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 11th house is asking you to pursue your goals with genuine intuition and discernment rather than anxious comparison or restless desire. If you can trust your sharpened instincts about people and opportunities, while consciously releasing insecurity-driven ambition, this transit has real potential to bring meaningful financial and social growth, arriving in its own slightly unconventional way but landing solidly once the gandanta phase has fully passed. For Libra, Jupiter owns your 3rd house of Sagittarius, and your 6th house of Pisces. Right now Jupiter is transiting your 10th house of career, status and father, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra of deep insecurity, hidden intuition and psychological intensity. Since the 10th house is one of the most visible parts of your chart, this transit brings your professional life into sharp and sometimes emotionally complicated focus. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism, when it touches the 10th house, does not give you a simple, easy climb up the career ladder. Instead, your professional path during this period is likely to involve a fair amount of behind-the-scenes strategy, subtle office politics, or situations where reading people correctly matters more than working harder than everyone else. Your instincts about colleagues, superiors, and career opportunities sharpen considerably now, and many Libra individuals will find themselves sensing which projects or relationships at work are genuinely worth investing in, often before there is any obvious evidence either way. On the practical side, this remains a genuinely strong period for career recognition, since Jupiter stays exalted even while moving through Ashlesha, and the 10th house is one of its most favorable placements for status and authority. Good recognition at work, an increase in authority or responsibility, and support from government bodies, senior figures or father figures are all realistic possibilities during this window. Taking up any work connected to teaching, counseling, knowledge sharing or advisory roles is especially favored now, and many of you will find that being seen as a guide or mentor by colleagues brings tangible career benefits. Pursuing further education or a qualification that supports your career is also a wise use of this transit's energy. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up in professional life as excessive worry about your reputation, an unhealthy need for approval from superiors, or a tendency to become territorial and guarded about your own work and ideas. Since the 6th house of obstacles and disputes is also ruled by Jupiter for you, workplace conflicts or disagreements with authority figures can surface during this period, though because Jupiter remains exalted, you are more likely to benefit from these disagreements in the long run than be harmed by them, provided you handle them with patience rather than defensiveness. There is also a strong public image dimension to this transit worth understanding. Ashlesha's hypnotic, magnetic quality, when placed in your most visible house, can genuinely increase your presence and influence in professional settings. Some Libra individuals will notice people listening more closely, deferring to their opinion more readily, or being drawn to their judgment in a way that feels new. Used well, this becomes real leadership charisma. Used carelessly, the same quality can tip into manipulation or being seen as someone who plays people rather than leads them honestly. And since Ashlesha's reputation for cunning is well known, it is worth being extra transparent in your professional dealings during this period so that your growing influence is trusted rather than quietly resented. Public recognition, awards, or a visible milestone in your career are also possible now, particularly given Jupiter's exalted strength, though the credit may arrive in a less direct or more delayed way than you initially expect. Since Ashlesha is ruled by Mercury, the lord of your 9th and 12th houses, much of your career progress may come through learning, careful planning, or even opportunities connected with foreign places or behind-the-scenes work. This is an excellent period to refine your expertise, pursue additional qualifications, or quietly prepare for a larger professional opportunity ahead. Your father's health and well-being deserves some extra attention during this transit, since the planet ruling your daily obstacles is moving through your father's house while sitting in an emotionally intense nakshatra. This does not necessarily indicate anything serious, but staying attentive and in regular contact is worthwhile through these weeks. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in the same 10th house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, your 11th house of gains, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga around your career and your income, meaning professional pressure, tension with authority, or unexpected obstacles to expected gains can increase through late September into October. Staying composed rather than reactive during workplace friction in this window will protect your standing far better than an emotional response would. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old fears connected to your professional identity, your reputation, or your relationship with authority figures can intensify briefly before finally starting to release. This is a meaningful window to consciously let go of career-related anxiety, or an outdated professional self-image, since doing so tends to clear the way for a stronger, more authentic standing once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo. Jupiter from your 10th house also casts its special aspects on your 2nd, 4th, and 6th houses. The 2nd house aspect supports your income and family finances even amid career pressure. The 4th house aspect brings a comforting, stabilizing touch to home and inner peace. The 6th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, helps you manage workplace obstacles and disputes more effectively than the surface tension might suggest. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 10th house is asking you to build your professional reputation on genuine substance and sharpened intuition rather than anxious people-pleasing or territorial defensiveness. If you can trust your instincts about your career path while staying humble and patient through the friction, this transit has strong potential to expand your authority, recognition, and long-term standing once the gandanta phase has fully passed. For Scorpio, Jupiter owns your second house of Sagittarius, and your fifth house of Pisces. Right now Jupiter is moving through your ninth house of higher learning, gurus, religion and philosophy, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra of deep intuition, hidden fears and psychic sensitivity. This is naturally one of the more favorable house placements for Jupiter, and even with Ashlesha's intensity layered in, the overall tone of this transit stays meaningful and expansive for you. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism, when it touches the ninth house, gives your pursuit of higher knowledge a distinctly deeper and more mystical quality than usual. Rather than simply studying facts or following conventional belief systems, you are likely to be drawn toward the hidden, esoteric or psychologically layered side of religion, philosophy and higher learning during this period. Subjects like astrology itself, occult sciences, deep psychology, or ancient healing traditions can feel especially magnetic right now, and many Scorpio individuals will find their spiritual instincts sharpening considerably, almost as if some inner knowing is waking up alongside the formal learning. On the practical side, this remains a strong period for higher education, publishing, teaching or long-distance travel, particularly journeys with a pilgrimage or learning purpose behind them. Jupiter stays exalted even while passing through Ashlesha, so genuine growth through knowledge, mentorship and philosophical exploration is well supported. Meeting a guru, teacher or mentor figure who significantly shapes your worldview is a real possibility during this window, and knowledge gain now tends to directly support your career and income later, so it is worth taking any learning opportunity that appears seriously rather than treating it as merely optional. Since Jupiter also rules your second house of wealth and family, this ninth house transit can bring financial opportunities through higher education, teaching, publishing, consulting or long-distance connections. Some of you may find that the knowledge you gain now becomes a valuable source of income or opens doors to greater prosperity in the months ahead. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up here as rigid or dogmatic thinking, an unusual attachment to being right about matters of belief, or difficulty tolerating other people's different philosophical or religious views. Since Ashlesha is fundamentally about clinging, the risk during this transit is holding your beliefs so tightly that they become a source of conflict rather than genuine wisdom. Staying open to questioning your own conclusions, rather than defending them out of insecurity, will help you get the most out of this otherwise excellent period for growth. For a number of Scorpio individuals, this transit can even plant the seed of a genuine career shift, moving away from a conventional job setup and towards something built around personal knowledge, teaching or spiritual guidance instead. Ashlesha's connection to the Nagas as healers and keepers of hidden wisdom fits naturally with a home-based or independent path built on sharing what you know, whether that is astrology, counseling, alternative healing or any subject you have quietly built deep expertise in over the years. This kind of shift will not necessarily happen overnight, but the pull toward it, and the confidence to eventually act on it, often becomes noticeably stronger during a transit like this one, especially as Jupiter's exaltation keeps the underlying energy genuinely supportive even when the surface path feels uncertain. The ninth house also sits 12th from your 10th house of career, meaning this transit carries a secondary undertone of stress or quiet loss around authority figures and professional standing. Some tension or distance with your father, or friction with bosses and authority figures at work, can surface now, and career progress through a conventional job setup may feel slower or more effortful than usual, even while your personal growth through knowledge accelerates. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in your ninth house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, your 10th house of career, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga touching both your beliefs and your professional standing, meaning conflicts connected to religion, philosophy or a teacher figure, alongside career-related frustration, can both intensify through late September into October. Avoiding unnecessary arguments over belief systems during this window is worth the extra restraint. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old rigid beliefs or an outdated relationship with a teacher, mentor or religious framework can come up for honest reassessment. This is a valuable window to release any belief system or teacher relationship that has stopped genuinely serving your growth, since doing so tends to open the door to deeper, more authentic wisdom once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo. Jupiter from your 9th house also casts its special aspects on your 1st, 3rd and 5th houses. The 1st house aspect brings a personal, self-affirming quality to your growth this period. The 3rd house aspect supports courage and effort in pursuing your studies or spiritual practice. The 5th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, strengthens creativity, romance, and matters connected to children, meaning the wisdom you gain now can meaningfully enrich these areas of your life too. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 9th house is asking you to pursue higher knowledge with genuine openness rather than dogmatic certainty, and to let your growing intuition deepen your wisdom instead of hardening it into rigid belief. If you can hold your convictions with humility while following the mystical pull this transit brings, you are likely to walk away from this period noticeably wiser, and possibly closer to a life path that revolves meaningfully around teaching, guiding, or sharing knowledge with others. For Sagittarius, Jupiter owns your own 1st house of life path, self and purpose, and your 4th house of Pisces, the house of home and mother. Right now Jupiter is moving through your 8th house of transformation, hidden matters and sudden events, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra most connected with insecurity, secrecy, and psychic depth. The 8th house is already one of the more intense houses in astrology, and with Ashlesha's serpent energy layered on top, this transit brings a genuinely transformative, sometimes turbulent quality to this period of your life. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism fits the 8th house extremely naturally, since both are connected to what lies beneath the surface, hidden knowledge, deep psychological material, and the process of shedding an old skin to allow something new to emerge. During this transit, you are likely to find yourself drawn towards subjects like the occult, psychology, astrology, research, or any field that requires digging beneath the obvious surface of things. Your intuition about danger, deception, or hidden truths sharpens considerably now, and many Sagittarius individuals will notice themselves sensing when something is off long before they have concrete proof. On the practical side, since Jupiter rules your own 1st house and is now transiting the 8th, this transit carries real potential for personal transformation and growth through higher learning, particularly in fields connected to finance, insurance, inheritance, wealth management, or any research-heavy subject. Some of you may go through meaningful career or life path shifts during this period, since Jupiter's own house of self is directly linked to this 8th house transit. Because Jupiter is exalted even in Ashlesha, the underlying direction of these changes tends to be genuinely beneficial in the long run, even if the process itself feels uncertain or unsettling while it is happening. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can intensify the 8th house's natural themes of fear and anxiety around loss, change, or the unknown. You may find yourself unusually worried about sudden events, financial shocks, or matters connected to shared resources, insurance, or a partner's finances during this period. It is worth being extra careful and attentive while driving or traveling, since the 8th house is traditionally connected with accidents, and Ashlesha's tendency to distract the mind with worry can make ordinary caution slip at the wrong moment. Gains through inheritance, insurance claims, shared family resources, or a spouse's income are also part of this transit's territory, and while the path to these gains may not always feel straightforward or easy to predict, the eventual outcome tends to favor you given Jupiter's exalted strength. Anyone with an interest in the stock market, trading, or other high-risk financial fields may find this an unusually good period to study these subjects seriously, provided decisions are made from genuine research rather than anxious impulse. If you already follow a spiritual or meditative practice, this transit holds real potential for moments of deep insight or even mystical experience, since Ashlesha's psychic sensitivity combined with the 8th house's natural depth creates fertile ground for glimpses beyond the ordinary, particularly as you move closer to the gandanta point in October. This transit can also stir up some instability or dissatisfaction in close relationships, particularly around emotional or physical intimacy, since expectations can run unusually high while trust and security feel harder to fully settle into. Being honest with a partner about these underlying insecurities, rather than letting silent dissatisfaction build, will help far more than pretending everything feels fine when it does not. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in the same 8th house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed. Your 9th house of higher learning and fortune, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga touching both transformation and your sense of luck or higher guidance, meaning this window through late September into October calls for genuine caution around health, finances, and travel, alongside a little extra patience with matters of faith or belief that may feel shakier than usual. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, this transformative period reaches its most intense point. Whatever deep change has been building throughout this transit tends to reach a genuine turning point around this window, sometimes through an ending that clears the way for something better, particularly once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo, whether now or after its later retrograde return through this same zone. Jupiter from your 8th house also casts its special aspects on your 12th, 2nd, and 4th houses. The 12th house aspect supports spiritual practice and quiet inner healing. The 2nd house aspect brings a steadying touch to family and finances even amid the 8th house intensity. The 4th house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, brings genuine comfort and support connected to home and mother during this otherwise demanding period. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 8th house is asking you to face transformation with courage rather than fear, and to trust that the deep changes unfolding now, however unsettling they feel in the moment, are ultimately moving you toward a stronger and wiser version of yourself, particularly given how strongly Jupiter's own house of self is entangled in this whole process. Since your 1st house Lord Jupiter is itself the planet undergoing this intense journey, how you personally choose to respond to change during these weeks matters more than usual. Patience and honest self-reflection will carry you through far better than resistance or panic ever could, and the wisdom you gather now about endings, letting go, and rebuilding is likely to stay with you well beyond this single transit. For Capricorn, Jupiter owns your 12th house of Sagittarius, the house of spirituality, foreign lands and foreign connections, and your 3rd house of Pisces, the house of effort, short travel and skill. Right now Jupiter is moving through your 7th house of relationships, marriage and business partnership, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra of deep insecurity, hidden intuition and psychological intensity. Since the 7th house governs your closest one-to-one bonds, this transit brings relationship matters into unusually sharp and emotionally layered focus. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism, when it touches the 7th house, does not simply bring a smooth, easy period of partnership. Instead, relationships during this transit tend to reveal their deeper, more hidden layers. Whatever has genuinely been unspoken between you and a partner, whether trust, insecurity, dependency, or unspoken expectation, is far more likely to surface now than usual. Your intuition about people you are considering as partners, whether in business or marriage, sharpens considerably during this period, and many Capricorn individuals will find themselves reading a potential partner's true intentions with unusual accuracy, almost sensing things before they are said out loud. On the practical side, this remains a genuinely favorable period for relationships and partnerships overall, since Jupiter stays exalted even while passing through Ashlesha, and the 7th house is one of its most naturally supportive placements for expansion in this area of life. Existing relationships can deepen significantly, sometimes moving toward marriage or a more serious commitment, and new business partnerships formed now can carry real long-term value. Starting a business connected to teaching, counseling, or knowledge sharing, particularly one built together with a partner or spouse, is especially well supported during this window. Your reach and reputation among other people can expand meaningfully too, since Jupiter here often brings a public image of being a wise, trustworthy guide or counselor. For those who are single and open to it, this transit can bring a meaningful new connection into your life, though given Ashlesha's hidden, layered nature, it may not arrive through the most conventional or obvious path. A person met through work, through a mutual friend, or in a setting that feels somewhat unexpected can turn out to matter far more than it initially seemed to. Since Jupiter also rules your 3rd house of effort and communication, courtship or partnership conversations during this period benefit from directness once trust starts to build, even if the early stages feel cautious or slow to open up. Pay attention as well to any pattern repeating from a past relationship. Ashlesha has a way of surfacing old relational wounds specifically so they can finally be understood and healed rather than carried forward unconsciously into a new bond. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up in relationships as clinginess, jealousy, or a fear of being left that pushes you to hold on too tightly even when a partner needs a little more space. Since Ashlesha's serpent energy is deeply connected to possessiveness, it is worth watching for moments where genuine care starts tipping into control or excessive need for reassurance. The healthiest way through this transit is honest, vulnerable conversation about your fears with a partner, rather than either suppressing them or acting them out through subtle manipulation, which Ashlesha can sometimes tempt you toward without you fully realizing it. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in this same 7th house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, your 8th house of transformation and shared resources, This creates a Papa Kartari Yoga touching both your closest relationships and shared finances, meaning arguments with a partner, tension over shared money, or unexpected relationship stress can increase through late September into October. Choosing your words carefully during disagreements in this window matters more than usual, since things said in the heat of the moment tend to leave a deeper mark than normal right now. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old relationship fears, old patterns of dependency, or an outdated dynamic with a partner can come to a genuine turning point. This is a valuable window to release relationship patterns built on fear rather than trust, since doing so tends to clear the way for a far healthier, more secure bond once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo. Jupiter from your 7th house also casts its special aspects on your 11th, 1st, and 3rd houses. The 11th house aspect brings a supportive boost to gains and your wider social network. The 1st house aspect adds a personal, self-affirming quality to how this relationship-focused period shapes your own identity. The 3rd house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, strengthens your courage and effort, meaning the relationship growth happening now can also translate into greater confidence in pursuing your own goals. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 7th house is asking you to build partnerships on honest vulnerability rather than fear-driven attachment, and to trust your sharpened intuition about people while resisting the pull toward possessiveness or control. If you can navigate this balance with patience, this transit holds real potential to deepen your most important relationships and expand your reach among others in a way that feels both meaningful and genuinely secure, laying groundwork that continues to strengthen well after Jupiter has moved on from this nakshatra. For Aquarius, Jupiter owns your 11th house of Sagittarius, the house of gains, income and desires, and your 2nd house of Pisces, the house of family, wealth and speech. Right now Jupiter is moving through your 6th house of daily work, disputes, health and obstacles, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra of deep insecurity, hidden intuition and psychological intensity. Since the 6th house governs the friction points of daily life, this transit brings a very particular, sometimes challenging, but ultimately useful energy to your everyday routine. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism, when it touches the 6th house, tends to sharpen your ability to sense trouble before it fully arrives, whether that is a workplace conflict brewing beneath the surface, a health issue your body has been quietly signaling, or a dispute that others have not yet noticed forming. Your instincts about who can genuinely be trusted at work, and who cannot, become notably more accurate during this period. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can make ordinary daily stress feel heavier than it actually is, so it is worth checking whether a worry is based on real evidence, or simply anxious pattern recognition working overtime. On the practical side, your focus during this transit is likely to shift away from relationship matters and squarely onto managing your daily work life, health and any ongoing disputes. This is not necessarily a bad thing, since the 6th house, while often uncomfortable, is also the house of service, skill building and overcoming obstacles, and Jupiter here, even while passing through Ashlesha, still carries real growth potential once these challenges are worked through. Good growth at your workplace is genuinely possible, particularly if you are willing to put in consistent daily effort rather than expecting sudden breakthroughs. Educating yourself in fields like medicine, law, healing, or any subject connected to solving other people's problems is especially favored now, and some of you may find yourselves naturally stepping into the role of someone others turn to for practical guidance through their own difficulties. Loans and debts also fall under this house's territory, and while the 6th house is generally considered a difficult placement for major borrowing, Jupiter's exalted strength here means that debts taken on now, particularly if used for something genuinely productive like further education or resolving a health matter, tend to work out more manageably than the 6th house's reputation might suggest. It is still worth reading the fine print carefully and avoiding impulsive financial commitments made purely to soothe an anxious moment, since Ashlesha's insecurity can make a hasty decision feel more urgent and necessary than it actually is. This transit can also favor competitive situations where preparation and persistence matter more than speed. Whether you are appearing for examinations, job interviews, legal matters, or competing for a promotion, Jupiter's exalted strength can help you gradually overcome obstacles. Ashlesha's strategic nature rewards careful planning and patience rather than impulsive action. Relationship matters can feel more strained than usual during this period, since the planet ruling desires and connection is currently occupied with obstacles instead. It would be wise to keep expectations realistic in partnership matters right now rather than pushing hard for major relationship milestones. And this is generally not the best window to begin a brand new romantic relationship, since the underlying energy is better suited to problem solving than romance. If circumstances require some distance from a partner during this time, whether through travel, work demands, or simply needing space, this can actually work in your favor rather than against you. Health deserves genuine attention during this transit, since the 6th house governs disease and daily well-being directly, and Ashlesha's tendency to store unprocessed emotion in the body means stress-related symptoms are more likely to appear now than at other times. Addressing the emotional root of any physical complaint, alongside conventional treatment, tends to bring faster and more lasting relief during this particular period. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, landing in this same 6th house right behind Jupiter. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, your 7th house of partnership, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga touching both your daily work life and your closest relationships, meaning workplace disputes, health flare-ups, or relationship friction can all increase through late September into October. This window calls for patience and consistent self-care rather than pushing through exhaustion or conflict. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old patterns of overwork, chronic health worry, or an unresolved workplace dispute can reach a genuine turning point. This is a valuable window to consciously address whatever obstacle has been quietly draining your energy, since resolving it now tends to clear real space for smoother daily functioning once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo. Jupiter from your 6th house also casts its special aspects on your 10th, 12th, and 2nd houses. The 10th house aspect brings a supportive boost to career matters even amid daily friction. The 12th house aspect encourages rest, healing, and quiet recovery. The 2nd house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, brings a steadying, protective touch to family and finances throughout this otherwise demanding period. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 6th house is asking you to face daily obstacles with sharpened intuition and steady effort rather than anxious avoidance, and to trust that whatever gets resolved now through patient, consistent work becomes a genuine source of strength once Jupiter moves fully into Leo and this demanding but ultimately beneficial cycle comes to a close, leaving you noticeably more capable and self-assured in handling whatever daily life brings afterward. For Pisces, Jupiter owns your 10th house of Sagittarius, the house of career, fame and reputation, and your own 1st house, the house of self, life path and life purpose. Right now Jupiter is moving through your 5th house of education, romance and creativity, and it is doing this while placed in Ashlesha Nakshatra, the nakshatra of deep insecurity, hidden intuition and psychic depth. Since Jupiter is transiting its exaltation sign Cancer, this transit carries exceptional strength and manifesting power even while Ashlesha adds its emotionally complex undertone. Ashlesha's coiled serpent symbolism, when it touches the 5th house, gives romance, creativity and learning a far deeper, more intuitive quality than usual. Rather than approaching love or creative expression in a light, casual way, you are likely to feel pulled toward connections and projects that carry real emotional depth and even a slightly mysterious or magnetic quality. Many Pisces individuals will find their creative instincts and their romantic intuition both sharpening considerably during this period, sensing the emotional undercurrent in a new relationship or a creative project almost before they can consciously explain why they feel drawn to it. On the practical side, this is a genuinely favorable window for love and romance, since that exalted strength gives this area of life exceptional support despite Ashlesha's emotionally complex influence. Existing romantic relationships can deepen meaningfully, and new connections formed now often carry a sense of destiny or unusual emotional resonance rather than feeling casual. This is also an excellent period to invest in learning something connected to your genuine interests, hobbies or talents, since education undertaken now, particularly anything with a creative, spiritual or psychologically rich dimension, tends to stick with you and shape your path going forward. Those of you with children can expect this period to bring them into sharper focus, whether through their achievements, their needs, or simply spending more meaningful time together. Since your 1st house Lord Jupiter is itself the planet moving through this transit, how you experience your own identity and life purpose is closely tied to how this 5th house journey unfolds. A quiet but real theme running through this period is self-expression, whether that means finally sharing creative work you have kept private, speaking openly about feelings you have usually guarded, or simply allowing yourself to be seen more fully by people you trust. Ashlesha's serpent symbolism carries an old association with hidden wisdom finally being revealed, and for many Pisces individuals this transit brings a similar unveiling on a personal level. Parts of your talent, your romantic nature, or your inner world that you have kept coiled up and protected may feel ready to come forward now. At the same time, Ashlesha's insecure undertone can show up in matters of the heart as jealousy, a fear of rejection, or an intense need for reassurance from a romantic partner. Since the fifth house is also connected to speculation and risk-taking, this same insecurity can push some of you toward impulsive financial risks or gambles taken as an emotional outlet rather than a considered decision. It is worth pausing before acting on any strong urge connected to love or money during this period, simply to check whether it is coming from genuine excitement or from an anxious need to feel secure quickly. The fifth house sits eighth from your 10th house of career, meaning this transit also carries an undertone of transformation or instability connected to your professional reputation and your relationship with authority figures or your father. Since Jupiter itself rules this 10th house for you, changes happening in your career during this period, even if they feel unsettling at first, are likely to be steering you toward a more authentic professional path in the longer run. From September 18th, Mars also enters Cancer, where it is debilitated, joining Jupiter in your 5th house. With Jupiter continuing to move toward Leo, where Ketu is currently placed, your 6th house, this creates a Papa Kartari Yoga influencing creativity, romance, children and education on one side, while Ketu influences work, health and daily responsibilities from the other. Emotional intensity in love, children's matters or creative pursuits may increase through late September into October, so patience and thoughtful decisions will be especially important. As Jupiter deepens into the final degrees of Ashlesha and enters the gandanta zone from around October 8th, old romantic fears, an outdated creative block, or an unresolved pattern connected to children can reach a genuine turning point. This is a valuable window to release whatever has been holding back your heart or your creative expression out of fear, since doing so tends to clear the way for something far more fulfilling once Jupiter finally crosses into Leo. Jupiter from your 5th house also casts its special aspects on your 9th, 11th and 1st houses. The 9th house aspect strengthens higher learning, faith and long journeys. The 11th house aspect brings a supportive boost to gains and friendships. The 1st house aspect, which also happens to be a house Jupiter rules for you, adds a personal, self-affirming quality to this whole transit, meaning the love, learning and creativity flowing through this period are also quietly shaping who you are becoming. Overall, Jupiter in Ashlesha through your 5th house is asking you to let love and creativity flow from genuine intuition rather than anxious need, and to trust that the deeper, more magnetic connections and projects appearing now are worth pursuing with an open heart rather than a guarded one, since this transit holds real potential to expand your happiness in a lasting and meaningful way. As we conclude, please keep in mind that these insights are based on the sidereal zodiac system used in Vedic astrology, which differs from the tropical system by approximately 24 degrees. These are general predictions. The real impact depends on your dasha cycles and your individual birth chart. For a personalized analysis or consultation, feel free to reach out. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And now, you can also hype this video to boost it within the community. Your support helps this knowledge reach more people who may benefit. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, keep learning, and keep shining bright.